So can you hear me now?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I
you
can
hear me now? Are you going to start singing? You take away the biggest part of me.
Hey, so my camera now.
Yeah, you can switch it off though. We don't need it. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
good. So how's it going? Is Fritz here? Fritz for some reason has muted himself. Fritz? Fritz?
Yes, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Are you here?
Hello. Namaste.
Oh, okay, that sounds really...
Vladi, stop it. It's too much stuff to edit for Zach. We need to behave now.
No.
Now...
It's all good. I'm trying to... Where's the... mate, I'm trying to find the...
Record button?
The topic list. There you go. That's where it is. All right. Yeah. No, record. I've already got the record button going. But didn't I send you guys like a list of topics?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. But did I send it to you by email or did I have it in?
In WhatsApp was it?
Yeah, it was WhatsApp, was it?
Yeah.
Can't believe it. It's so technologically backward that I am. All right. I'm gonna leave this in, by the way, because it's just entertaining to have our random chat stuff up. But all right, let me do some introductions. So first of all, we've got Vlad, who is Mr. Beautiful from Colombia, because mate, you're just fantastic. The hair, the look, the style, the charisma. That's just yeah. You are one in a million, Vlad, I think. And I think you're probably also the only South American with a Russian name.
Yeah, could be. But no. Actually, there's quite a lot of Vladimirs in Colombia, but and also in Cuba. Because of the influence of the Cold War, and then it depends, on the, let's say, political vision of your parents. If they were like a communist, then they put your name like Vladimir or Ivan or Sergei or something like this. Okay. And the more capitalist guys were then calling the sons Michael and so on.
Okay, so all right, now we know the political orientation of your parents. That's cool. It's always nice to have this background information, Vlad. On top of that, we've also got Fritz, who is almost as German as I am. Fritz?
Hello, my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, Fritz, it's always good to have you here. You're a good sport. You also know as many cheeky English terms as I do, and that's always great to hear too. So just to give us a bit of background. So I met Fritz about 7. Yeah, we started already. It's all right. You can talk. Don't worry, Vlad.
Okay.
It's just feel free to jump in. Exactly. So I got to know Fritz about 7 or 8 years ago when Fritz worked for a very sort of traditional recruiting company. And then after that, we stayed friends, we stayed in touch, and then we reacquainted ourselves on a more, should we say, a continuous basis when Fritz started working with a startup in Berlin as part of the HR department. And when I joined up there, I also had the immense pleasure of meeting not only Fritz on a regular basis, but also Vlad, with whom by our second meeting, we were already on hugging terms. Right, Vlad?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is always good. A hug is better than a handshake. I think it's the common terminology. Not anymore, of course. but it used to be. Yeah. You guys are both recruitment specialists. So anything that I know about recruitment, I've obviously learned from somebody else. But it's really interesting because the first thing I'd like to ask with regards to recruitment, and then we'll come back as well because I also want to hear your thoughts on a lot of other topics too. But the first thing I want to ask is why in the company, the startup where we all met together, you were called people and culture and not human resources.
Vladi, you want to take that?
No, you can do it. Go ahead.
So basically, I had the very same question, Zach, when I joined the company I'm currently working for, and the reason for that is, or at least how I perceived it, is that we don't see our colleagues or the employees as human resources or resources in that sense, but rather as individuals, as human beings, and therefore we rather see them as people and not as a resource. This is how I understood it, at least. I don't know if you have a different impression, Vladi.
No, I totally agree with you. So maybe in addition to this, I think let's say the understanding of human resources or the people within the company that are taking care of the culture, the people's performance and so on, has evolved into a very different new role compared to what it used to be like 15 or 20 years ago. So my first experience working for HR was actually many years ago, as I didn't even know what was all about it. So it was after finishing school, I decided to do something like a professional training. It was only 2 years long, and I was working for the human resources department of a very big pharma company. And yeah, now it's something very different. So now the culture is very crucial. You are really taking care also about the business. So I would say that now our main task, if you want to put it in just one sentence, is to convert all the business strategy into people strategy. And that's maybe one of the reasons why the name also changed.
Yes, and furthermore, I believe it's more of an employee-driven labor market, and that also, I think, contributes to the change and how, first startups, but later on, hopefully, also big corporations see their employees. So they're just not only resources, but human beings with needs, and therefore. You can't simply hire someone by telling him, okay, we are that big company, and therefore I assume you want to work for us. You need to present like a specific culture to the applicants or to the people you are intending to hire, and people. They have a stronger focus on where they want to work. They want to identify themselves with a specific culture, and I think this also contributes to the change in labeling this department or that team.
I should also just point out that for the benefit of the people who are listening to this, that Vlad and I are both in Berlin, and that's why the communication is so clear. Whereas Fritz is currently at the Bayern Munich training camp. And
guys, we need to hurry up. I want to see the match.
Why? We know the result anyway. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. That's your take on that?
Yeah. I mean, you quote me on it. Go on in. I don't think Bayern's going to get through. But anyway, we will come to this later. It's only fair to talk about football because I know how much Vlad loves it. But yeah, I mean, okay, so because for me it was really cool. This thing about culture is extremely important. I think it's fascinating. It's a topic which I love. I'm driven essentially by this pursuit of understanding more and more about different cultures, different ways of seeing things, learning about how different people approach similar topics. So, when the first time you introduced me, this is from our people and culture team, I was really inspired by the name, and it basically told me about how cool a mood, an atmosphere there was at the company. Now, obviously, things have been a bit difficult since the beginning of Corona. We don't necessarily have to go into the details of the impact that Corona has had. But if we simply look at the initial atmosphere within the company, surely you look back at those days and you feel a certain warmth, don't you, in how well everybody seemed to socialize, how they used to come together, how there was a real sort of sense of a team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even nowadays, I mean, maybe for the listeners, it's important to know that we had to let go a majority of our employees. Nevertheless, I am still in touch with most of them, and the majority of them asks me, should you ever start to grow again? Please let me know. I would love to come back. We brought back a few employees which we needed, and I mean, this is basically a sign for that the People and Culture Department has done something right. Otherwise, people wouldn't be motivated to come back and work for us again. And this is exactly the point we were talking about beforehand, that people have a precise look on what kind of culture they then might work in once they apply at the company. And if they don't like the culture, they're more likely to give notice and leave. And since we are talking about recruiting is one very important topic, but retention is even more important, because you can recruit as many new employees as you want. You also need like a base of employees staying with you and developing together with you the culture in that company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would almost compare it with kind of sales, where there are companies who operate simply on generating new sales, and there are other companies that generate on basically keeping hold of existing customers, where they try to develop a relationship with the customers because they feel that the success of the business is in the longevity. And in this case, perhaps there is a similarity in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, until a certain degree, it's definitely cheaper to keep your current employees and develop them and invest in them. At one point, I believe it can be beneficial for both sides if they go separate ways and you hire a more junior person who can do the same job but is less expensive. But I was and I still am always a fan of developing people and helping them, supporting them to become better and learn new things, and therefore it's then beneficial for the company as well.
Yeah. Absolutely true, and also maybe important to remark that even if you're having a very healthy company in terms of finance and so on. In Germany, the average right now is about 3.5 years that people are changing positions or are changing the company. So that's a thing that even that that people are going to leave at some point, you have to invest quite a lot in the culture and in the people itself. And I can tell you from my experience, so I was one of the guys who lived and then I was still like learning quite a lot, and I took quite a lot for my career. And now there's I would say many things that while I'm doing, I'm very thankful to that let's say training that we had, that wasn't training like a class at university, but it's just like the culture, something that to do, how to become more efficient and how to become better, just living a very nice company culture.
Yeah, and I mean, Vlad, how is it now where you are? Okay, obviously we have to factor in that Corona has heavily changed the way that perhaps you would interact with people, or at least limited this severely. But you're still acquainted intimately with the people you work with. You communicate with them regularly. How is the atmosphere there? Is there a similar drive towards creating a culture, or is it more sort of operational?
No, absolutely. So I'm really happy where I am now. So I'm working now for a deep tech startup. So actually, I would say the greatest deep tech startup in the world. So what we are doing is really crazy. So the only thing that possible to continue doing crazy things, that people are happy and they really love what they do. And that's why we are, for example, we are just now around 22 people. And that's why they decide to hire at that point already someone who take care of all the people and culture topics. So it's for sure also let's say the main interest of founders, let's say. Maybe just one big difference, and that's also different for the culture. I would say, well, you have many kind of founders, and they are, let's say, all great if they are really interested in the people and in the culture. But I would say I differentiate between two different type of founders. The founders that are really like a business driven, that they really know how to run a business, and they are not that product focused. They are more business focused. And in the case where I am working now, they are really like product focused. They really love what they are doing, this deep tech stuff that I really don't understand. I have no clue about what they are really doing with the product. It's about the smooth particle hydrodynamics. And that's very different. And then you see also the impact that it has in the culture.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned once, I think, when we were speaking the last time about the work that they do, and it completely flew over my head. I mean, today or yesterday, some news came out from the USA research that they were doing about subparticle physics, and they believe they may have found like a fifth basis for energy. But anyway, I have no idea. It's a completely interesting subject area. Maybe it's something that some of your colleagues would also be interested in. So I find it fascinating the way that they push forward these kinds of products. But you do raise some very interesting points, because there is, the name of this podcast is Startup and Whisky. And so, the whiskey element is obviously quite clear, where the inspiration for that comes from. However, the startup scene is because essentially, Berlin is almost, how would you say? Any new innovation, would you say it's startup driven? Because even the large companies, they all have these little spin-off startups, or they're investing in startups. Fritz, do you see it that way as well? Do you think that startups are driving innovation in Berlin?
I perfectly agree. I think the reason for that is that when that all started roughly 15 years ago, that Berlin was kind of on the look for its own identity, and it was cheap to live here. It was kind of a liberal and free space that might have attracted young innovative founders to come to Berlin. Nowadays, you have a lot of those huge VC companies, so that venture capitalist companies who invest in startups. You have a lot of founders here, and therefore a lot of workforce here. And this all together is a very attractive place for new ideas and creative teams. And therefore, I believe Berlin has basically emerged as one of the startup hubs or startup capitals, definitely in Germany, if not in Europe as well. And as you mentioned, companies such as Lufthansa, those consultancy companies, they all have their hubs here, or their labs, as the laboratories as they call it. And it's not exactly the same thing, because when you have a big corporation which is backing you, it might sound interesting because they're financing you, but I know for a fact that it's sometimes also different, because you are actually labeled as a startup, but you have to deal with all those slow and less flexible, less agile processes of the corporation who's basically backing you.
Sorry, yes, Vlad.
No, I will just say a tiny comment, maybe. I agree with the second part, but disagree a bit with the first part, because I think it's important to, or let's say, in my opinion, not every single startup is innovating, even if they are huge. Like, we have also big players in the Berlin startup scene that they are great as a company, and they are amazing. They are doing huge revenue that it's also good for Berlin, because Berlin without the startup would be more like a problem. But I would really let clear that not every startup is innovating. So you have startups that they are maybe selling furniture, and they are evaluating I don't know how many billions, and they are innovating in the way they are selling. But at the end, you have the same bet or the same coach at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the product itself isn't. Yeah.
I think I didn't say that basically all of them are all innovative or innovators.
I said that. I said that. I'll own the error. It's okay. Yeah. But please continue, Fritz.
I just need an excuse to say my opinion.
You don't even need an excuse, Vlad. You just say it. That's just the way you are. Okay. But we love you for it, so it's all good. But sorry, please, Fritz.
If they sell furniture, for example, then they probably have somehow disrupted the furniture market by creating a platform where you can compare IKEA with Höfner with all those big furniture companies. Therefore, I would also see that as an invention in a certain way, or as a way of bringing a market to the next level.
Yeah, but you just mentioned one of the, let's say, biggest words in the startup scene, and it's about the disruption. So at some point, it's like, let's try to define the word. It's like not every single innovation is automatically disrupting something. You know, the best example I have ever seen was about the music industry. Like, as you know, 67 years ago, we had these vinyls and long plays. And it was like, okay, they were very big, so it was difficult to transportate. They were like, you can only listen like 3 to 5 songs per side and so on. And then at some point, we got CDs that they were like, you can put in some aspect, like what's better quality of audio. You can also put a larger amount of data inside and so on. And that was a very huge innovation that wasn't disruptive, because at the end, you still need to press, you still need to have quite a lot of big companies selling the records. You have to, it was very expensive for an artist to produce an album and so on. If we want to talk about disruption, then we have to talk about Spotify. And then where you can just pay like, I don't know, 10 euro in a month, and you have access to the whole music in the world. So I would say there's a lot of startups for sure. They are innovating, but they are turning from the vinyl into the CD, but they are not doing Spotify stuff.
But isn't that the success of Apple, for example? You know, forgive me if anybody is a huge Apple fan, but essentially, didn't Apple make their money by taking established products and simply improving upon the design? Wasn't that their business model?
Yeah, but it's one thing is innovation, another thing is making money.
Okay, that's a fair point. I mean, I'm happy to do both. I'm not going to do either, but I mean, you know, if there's a choice that can be made. But you both mentioned, okay, we talked about Berlin, but you both mentioned different factors which could be perhaps important to people who want to look at a company and apply for the company. So Vlad, you mentioned the founders. And Fritz, you also went into, like, for example, Berlin being a cool place, or at least 15 years ago, being a cool place, the cheap place to live in and so on, as also being an attractive thing, I suppose, for people to consider when making job applications. Do you think that these are the main issues that people should look at? Because, you know, working at a startup, if I'm not mistaken, it's hard work, and you don't always get paid the highest wage, do you?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, if I shall give an advice what to consider before applying for jobs in startups, I would basically do my own due diligence. I would check, first of all, the founders. Who are the founders? What have they done before? Check their resumes. Who are the investors? Are there big names investors? Are there several smaller ones? Does it fit? Do they make any revenue yet? How many people are working there? Those are all things, of course, the culture, which I would have a very close look at before I would apply there. No, I forgot what I wanted to say. What to consider as well before applying there was that you have to be aware of the fact that you will get possibly a rather low salary. You have to work, I think, definitely more than 8 hours a day. It's rather like 10 to 12 hours a day. Vacation is a thing which is sometimes not very well perceived in startups because they all have to look on their budget and on their payroll. So they rather want people who are fresh from university, who are eager to work a lot. And if you're fine with that, then I think it's a great place where you can definitely learn a lot. You are not in a specific department, such as in a big corporation, but it's rather that you can gain experience in all sorts of fields. So depending on what the needs of that specific startup is, they can place you in the business development section when they see, oh, he's really good in business development. Maybe he's more of a salesperson, so you will be shifted to the sales department and so on, and marketing. And it's a great place to gain a lot of experience in a wide range of topics.
Vlad, you got anything to add to that, or did that?
Maybe the only thing would be if it's about roughly 500 startups are founded in Berlin every year, and normally you only hear about 10 to 20 startups that are very strong, present in the press, social media, and so on. So I would say also take the time and look for the other 400 and something that are not that well known, and then you will also see a lot of nice opportunities. So and the advice or the best advice that I always became from Fritz, actually, as I was applying, just follow your feelings. And if you got a good feeling while talking to the next or to the coming manager or to the recruiter and so on, then do it, because at the end you don't know what's gonna happen. You also have to be aware that startup is a risky thing. Even if you have the best investors and so on, there's always a possibility that things don't really work out in the end. So my two advice: follow your feelings, and the second one is not only look for the famous ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Fritz.
And maybe one last point, and which you just mentioned, Vladi, is be aware of the risk working in a startup. So it's perfectly normal that you start your job there, and before your notice period, your probation period, has ended, the startup doesn't exist anymore. So if you're fine with that kind of risk when you're young, I think then it's no problem, and especially in that startup world and the VC network, you will quickly find a new job. I think you shouldn't be afraid of that risk.
And Vlad, if we look at it also from the perspective of a diversified workforce, do you think startups give more opportunities to people from different backgrounds, different gender groups? Do you think it's a better, easier, more welcoming workplace than traditional companies?
Well, that's a difficult one, because I have only experience working for startups, so I have no I can compare with the other companies. But I would say, that's good. That's more Berlin that stopped us. And I also would say also in big corporations nowadays, they are also putting quite a lot of effort in diversity and also in hiring without the bias and so on. So I would say nowadays you will find all these kinds of diversity and so on almost everywhere in Germany, at least, or in Berlin.
Fritz, I mean, you've worked in companies that are not necessarily startups. How did you rate them from that perspective, from the the opportunities that they gave less typical groups, shall we say, within society?
To be honest, diversity was way lower where I used to work, but that had also something to do with the fact that every single employee who intended to work there needed to be fluent in German. And this is a big advantage of the startups, because they usually company language is English, and as long as you speak English, depends of course on which team you're working in, that's okay, and you don't necessarily need to be able to speak German. This was one criteria which probably worked against diversity in that corporation I used to work for. Nevertheless, I didn't have the feeling that they are aiming for creating a bigger diversity by hiring people from different origins or different cultural backgrounds. It was a pretty streamlined company in that sense. So also the word diversity, I was working almost 4 years for them, and never had I listened or had I heard the word diversity.
Yeah, which in itself is quite interesting, isn't it? I've read quite a lot of books recently, especially in light of the Black Lives Matter movement, but also before. It's quite clear that society has always had certain elements within which were perhaps before not quite as vocal as they became post 2016. And that's something that we could perhaps analyze on a different occasion. But one of the books that I read most recently was by Kenya Hunt, and it's called Girl. And I think it's a fascinating read. And obviously it talks about not only gender equality on the basis of the subject matter girl, but especially a girl from African origin. And she talks about one particular episode where she tried to find a flat on a certain platform, and every single home that she tried to basically book based upon their availability, because they were all available, she was rejected. And so my question is, do you feel, for example, that application processes should include photographs?
Difficult question. I mean, in the United States, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. In the United States, for example, there are no pictures on the CVs, whereas in Europe, it's sometimes, or in Germany, most of the time, people put a picture of themselves on the CV. For me, as a recruiter, I very much appreciate someone putting a picture on his CV, because I've seen resumes where someone took a selfie while he was sitting on the loo. And this, in return, told me a lot about that person. I mean, nevertheless, I still picked up the phone and gave it a try.
Was Vlad one of those?
No, he wasn't.
No,
he wasn't.
Okay, I don't like it. I don't like it at all, to be honest.
Okay.
What don't you like? Pictures on the CV?
Yeah, I can tell you, as I was applying for my last position, that was I don't know, some month ago, I was in a process for a company, and before I joined the last step with the head of X, she asked me for a picture, and then I withdrew from the process without giving. I just said, it's okay. I can't believe that you're asking me actively for a picture. So yeah, have a good one, and I withdrew from the process.
Oh, you withdrew, so it's not like you were chucked off. Okay, all right. Wow, so you have very strong feelings about this, Vlad. Fritz, I think with you it's not an issue.
Yeah,
because sorry, go on.
Because Fritz, I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think in at least in Germany, if I send the picture as a candidate, it's fine, but you can't as a recruiter ask actively for pictures, right?
No,
okay.
I mean, if you're a good recruiter, you should do your job properly, and you Google that person, then you eventually find a picture anyways. And if you don't, then please wait for the on-site interview, and then you see how that person looks like.
Yeah, but
so
it's
that's
actually
okay, is it?
But it's actually illegal to ask actively for pictures, right?
I have no idea whether that's legal or not, but I would never do it.
Yeah, also true.
Okay.
It's a matter of education, if you ask me.
All right. So basically, it's okay then for prospective employers or recruiters to basically trawl through social media to try to find some background info about people. That's acceptable, is it?
I mean, nobody forbids you to do that. And if you need more information, if the resume is not that if it's very brief and you want some more background information, of course you do some research, especially when it's about like important positions or positions which are quite expensive with a higher salary. Then I mean, I would expect my recruiter, if I was a founder, to do some proper research in order to only present me the most the best fitting and the most suitable candidates.
Okay, and what if they were somebody like myself who doesn't really have any social media presence? Would you like start having would the alarm bells start ringing?
Not at all. Quite the opposite. I'm from an older generation who basically grew up without internet and all that stuff and social media.
That's also true.
So I feel a lot of sympathy for people who don't appear in social media at all.
Okay. But you do, Fritz, don't you? You've got some real popular hardcore clubbing web pages, don't you, on your social media profile?
Which one? I mean, I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter.
Same here. No, but it also depends on the position, because if you are looking for a senior recruiter or something like this, something that is recruitment related, I would expect that this person already has a LinkedIn account. Otherwise would be, I don't know, a bit difficult because, you know what I mean.
Yeah, but do you remember, Fritz, you guys back in the old company, I remember you guys told me about recruiters on websites like LinkedIn or they're Xing and so on, or Crossing or whatever they want to call themselves. I don't know.
Xing.
But the photos of the main profile photos of some of the recruiters was quite strange. Do you remember there were some American ones where there were people wearing like revealing clothing and beach wear? Do you remember this? I mean, surely. I mean, would you send the person who as a recruiter dressed in a bikini? Would you do that?
Well, it depends on the position, huh?
What position are we talking about here, Fritz?
What was it a trick question, Zach?
No, sorry, it wasn't. But I should have realized that you would turn it into a trick question. But there you go. Okay.
I would, for example, let's assume there's a girl in a bikini and she applies for a marketing position. Then I'd probably even feel more attracted to her as a candidate, because she knows how to attract attention and how to present herself, and she's probably very well educated with Instagram and what we might need in that current position.
And would it work the same if you had like a gym shot of a guy with an oiled chest, shall we say, for example, who like lifts 150 kilos with his little finger? Would that also? Yeah.
He might be a perfect fit for sales. I mean, in sales, the weirdest person work in sales. I used to work in sales myself, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
now that you said that.
Yeah, and salespeople are always a little special, and therefore you need to be a bit more forgiving when you see pictures of those applicants or candidates.
Is that why you started boxing?
This is why I need boxing to balance out my people and culture work, because my employees make me so angry every day, and I need to get rid of them.
Are you talking about me?
For example, now that you've left, I mean, I don't need to go boxing anymore, but usually I love bullying my employees. That's actually one of the reasons why I started working in people and culture, because I can do so without being having to worry about anything. If they want to complain, they have to complain to me. No, just joking. But I think in the end, it always depends for which team you're hiring, and therefore you need to be quite open-minded.
Yeah. And okay, otherwise, Vlad, I mean, you haven't had any in Berlin any negative experiences, have you, in a professional environment? I mean, perhaps you may have had other kinds of negative experiences with regards to I don't know, racial profiling or racism in itself, but otherwise.
Well, not in terms of gender or racism, but also, the last time I was applying for the position that I have now, I was like, I I wasn't rejected, but I applied for a company and all the process went very well. And then I never heard again from those guys. And then after 2 months, they call me again and say, Xavier, are you still interested? And I was asking, so yeah, maybe, but what happened the last 2 months? And then they told me actually they were looking for a woman. And that's also kind of discrimination. I mean, not kind of discrimination, it's actually discrimination 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, do you think it's a bit naive of them to actually come out and tell you that that was the case?
Yeah, it was very naive. At the end, you know me, I try to be a good person and try to give, let's say the value of the how honest they were and so on. But that's also a thing that as a recruiter, you have to be very careful in every single word that you tell to candidates. But because in the case that I would be very angry, I could sue them. It's that really illegal to do any kind of discriminations, and the law doesn't make any kind of difference if it's about gender or about race or about something different, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Fritz,
person.
Go on, please.
No, I just wanted to say that person must have been quite inexperienced, because this is one of the basics you learn. Also, when you publish a job description, you always need to check every single bullet point whether you don't contradict the so-called Allgemeines Gleichbehandlungsgesetz, which is basically that law which forbids you to discriminate certain any applicant for his religious beliefs, for his gender, etc.
Can you say that word in German again, please?
Allgemeines Gleichbehandlungsgesetz.
That's
AGG.
one word, guys.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah. That's one word. It took you 3 sentences to say that in English.
But if I may contribute one last point to the topic diversity, I remember, Vladi, you probably do as well. We had an employee. She was from the Valley, and at one point she complained about us lacking diversity. I mean, at that time we were roughly about 150, 160 employees, and we had employees from 24 or 25 different nations. So I'd call it rather diverse. We had 40% women, 60% men, a lot of queer and gay people who could live their sexual orientation freely in our company culture. And nevertheless, she complained that we are lacking of people of color. I don't know whether that's the political correct theme. And I always, I of course I didn't tell her at that time, but I have a problem with that kind of approach. Because in the end, if I may finish that sentence, Vladi, afterwards you're welcome to rip me apart on my argument. But in the end, I don't care what color a person is. I don't care where that person is from. I don't care which languages they speak. If that person is suitable for a certain position, then I'm hiring that person. And if there is a person who has a darker skin, who is not as good as the person I intend to hire, then sorry, bad luck. I would never hire someone. I mean, that's also a kind of a discrimination for the more suitable candidates. So this is why I'm a bit allergic to those diversity discussions when people are asking for more diversity in a certain company. It's about the best fitting candidate. That's it. The person who can do the job the best, that's the one I want to hire.
Yeah. Vlad, how would you designate your own ethnic origin? How would you categorize yourself, if you had to use the word category at all?
My origins?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't tell you where I am from, but or where I was.
So this term, people of color, would you consider yourself to be a person of color? Would you use that? Would you accept that as a term? I'm not criticizing your use of that term, by the way, Fritz. I think lots of people use the term people of color. Vlad, would you say that would also represent you?
No, I'm colorful, but no, I'm not really a people of color.
Okay, all right. But you do have, is it Caribbean origins, African origins? How would you, I think you told us once,
Well, yeah,
partially about the
because
story.
actually, my family is from a very tiny island in the Caribbean Sea, and there was an island, yeah, 300-400 years ago. There were a lot of British people and slaves from Africa, and at some point they start to build families. So I'm the result of a mix of I would say so African British, but I have no connection to Africa or to the UK.
Hmm.
So because that was the story of my family many centuries ago. Well, not many, but 3 or 4 centuries ago.
Sure.
And now I'm speaking Spanish and so on. So yeah.
Okay. All right, fine. So, it goes far, far back in your family ancestry. But if somebody was to say to you, okay, what's your ethnic origin? You'd say, yeah, I'm Colombian, guys. That's where I was born. That's where my family's from. That's basically me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Um, Fritz, with regards to this term, people of color, I do believe, politically speaking, people of color is the term that we use, but not just to refer to black people. It's also used to refer to Asian people and people of from India, Pakistan, and so on.
How about
And
how about
But
how about
would you
how
say
about
you're?
yeah, go on. How about
how
what?
about how about me as a so-called white person? Am I also not also a people of color,
No, no,
a person of color in that sense?
but wait.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting what you were saying, Zach, because actually at the end it's like people of color is every single non-European.
Yeah. I don't like it, to be honest. I don't like the term people of color because that would suggest to me that the default color is white, which is what I think Fritz is alluding to.
Yeah.
And anybody who is not white, oh, that's people of color. So
Ah,
I
at the,
I disagree with that use of the use of people of color, but I've heard lots of politicians, journalists, writers, they use this term people of color. There's also another term in the UK which is used. It's BAME, BAME, Black Asian multi-ethnic.
ah,
And a lot of people really dislike this as well.
yeah, but
And
this.
yeah.
No, I just say want to say this discussion took, I mean, not our discussion, but the all discrimination, diversity, and so on, took a a very bad direction. And then many years ago, also, I'm not talking not only about this modern type of diversity and so on, because as you know, I'm not telling you anything new. The human race is actually only one. So talking about racism is per se wrong because actually we only have one race. And then about being, calling people, for example, in Colombia, it's okay to call a black people black, to call a black people negro. And it's not something that is disrespectful or something like this, because in the same way, I was always called during my school mono, that is a word to specify people that are blonde, or let's say more not that dark. And for us, so why, if I'm a white person, why should be offended because someone is calling me white? And the same with the black people. So if I start like I don't know, finding new, I don't know how you would call it, like a euphemism, just to not to mention the real thing, then I have a problem with it.
No, black as a political color is acceptable, and in fact, if you think about the movement Black Lives Matter, black is the political color which is accepted everywhere. White is also the political color which is accepted everywhere. I think a part of the problem lies, therefore, is that you tend to run out of colors to be able to introduce other ethnic cultures. And so maybe this may be one of the reasons why people want to use terms such as people of color or so on. I myself don't see the point, and I'm quite. I agree with you definitely, Vlad, in that we are one human race. Unfortunately, there are lots of people, and the majority of them tend to be white, where they believe there is some kind of inherent supremacy within that particular color, should we say, that their skin has. Even though there is absolutely zero truth or validity in that particular opinion. And it's unfortunate. So, I would love to live in a world where everybody thought the exact same way that you guys did. Unfortunately, the case that is taking place right now. So this is Derek Chauvin. His trial at the moment is taking place. The police officer or the former officer who killed George Floyd. That's currently underway. Institutionalized forms of discrimination do exist, it's going to take a long time to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's institutionalized racism. I mean, we are talking about black lists. We're talking about black labor. This is all institutionalized racism, but we are so used to that we don't really realize that. But I mean, in the end, sometimes I ask myself, why do we basically need to stereotype certain people or people at all? Why is the race, why does it play a role, or the skin? Same. For me, it's a bit of it's not a pointless discussion, but I'm tired of that discussion, similar to religious discussions. In the end, whether you believe in a higher power, whether that higher power is called Muhammad, whether it's Buddha, whether it's whatever, it's in the end all the same. And I would love people to realize that in order to reduce conflicts because of their beliefs.
Have you ever heard about the concept? It's called aporophobia.
No. That's fear of something, but what is it? What is it fear of?
Aporophobia is the fear of poverty. And actually, if you analyze all this kind of so-called discrimination, it's about poverty. You normally, or no one has a problem about the black rich people, or about the rich Arabs, or about the rich Africans. We are at the end where it's about money and power. And I assume that we forgot that, and now we are trying to talk about black people just to forget the real problem. This is a concept of a Spanish philosopher. It was actually created in the 90s, and unfortunately, the concept is not that well. It's not that now, not that popular. But for me, it's the best explanation for every single problem. It's like when you talk about maybe Turkish people in Berlin, that they felt discriminated, or in Germany. Yeah, but what about the guy from BioNTech, the guy who discovered this vaccine for COVID-19? So I'm sure he doesn't have any experience with racism, because at the end, it's about how much money and how much power do you have. And it's not about the color of your skin or your origins.
So you think it's classism is the main element here that should be discussed, and not race?
It's about power and money, but because even class, you also have people without not that high amount of money, but they are part of the upper class, and they also feel this kind of discrimination just because they have less money, let's say. Mm-hmm. And that's also because money is a thing that if in disregard of our opinion, money is something that defines also your success. If you see in a company, people that are really successful get more money than people that are not that successful. Like, better positions are better pay and so on. So it's a change that I know. It's not that I have something against it, but at the end, it's about the money and not about where you are from.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. I tend to see when I do these podcasts, I tend to think that about an hour more or less is the sort of cutoff point, because people seem to be able to concentrate for a certain period of time before they sort of switch off. So we're already coming up to that point. But what I'd like to also set in motion is that we kind of sort of come together occasionally, if as frequently as you guys are available, obviously. And talk about different elements of mainly the startup scene, but also startups exist within society, and so therefore these other societal interests also formulate a part of the startup scene. So I also want there to be a bit of sort of crossover with some of the topical issues of the day. But some of the points that we made earlier on, which with regards to the startup scene and job applications and so on, Fritz and Vlad, I'd also like to talk to you in perhaps another or a future episode about the kind of terminology that is used in writing up job ads. What makes the job ad exciting? What encourages people to apply? Are there specific words that people should be wary of? And so on. If this is like a kind of topic that we can discuss next time, do you have thoughts on that we can perhaps talk about for the next opportunity that we have?
I'd absolutely love that. I mean, I also just had a look on the watch, and I realized that we covered quite a few topics, but there's still a lot which we haven't talked about. So I think there needs to be at least a part 2 of this podcast. I will also try to prepare myself better than I did for this podcast.
Same here.
It's my very first podcast. So
I wanted this, Ben. This is brilliant. This is what I wanted. I just wanted you guys to come and speak raw. Yeah, I wanted it to be a conversation. Because I know what you guys are like. You're very intelligent, and so therefore your natural responses are very much on point. But also we have this. We're very close in our friendship and affection for one another. So when we sort of jump off on a tangent, we can follow that up quite quickly with very interesting conversations. So that's basically what I wanted. And that little bit at the end, I love it. It was really important for me that we could also cover those kinds of topics. But yeah, Fritz, I think not only a part 2, I'd love to be able to develop an entire series to this where we could sort of open up a bit of the mystery that is the startup scene to those people who are a bit older, and for whom
such as me.
But you're like right you guys, in there, man. Yeah, absolutely. Me definitely, but you guys are in there. You are Mr. Startup as far as I'm concerned, Fritz, and Vlad definitely is. I don't know. You're pushing some kind of lordship position, especially when you work for a company which has a product that I don't even understand what they do. And so, I mean, that's about as new age startup as you can get, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. So it would be also very nice if we can talk next time, or maybe in a third time, more about organizational development, because to be honest, I'm not recruiting anymore, and I only did that for some months while working with Fritz, who is actually a very nice recruiter, but that's not the case with me. So actually recruitment is the part I'd like the least from HR. So
that's cool.
If we could have and I'm sure you're going to love it, because at the end is how to organize better a society. So it's a lot of sociology and so on, but applied within a company.
Definitely, I love that.
Sounds super interesting, and I have the feeling I can learn a lot from you, Vladi.
We will see.
Wonderful. All right, guys. Now this is the opportunity where you can all run off and grab your whiskey bottle, and let it not be said that we have a false title in our podcast. So thank you very much, both of you. What can I say? I miss you guys both, and I really look forward to the day where we could actually meet up and have this chat in person.
I can't wait, dear chaps. I mean, I miss touching people. Vladi, and you also. I'm a very touchy person. No, I really need this physical interaction with people. I don't know why, but I just need it, and I really miss that. So I can't wait to have like a good catch up with you guys in person, but I also can't wait to stand next to 100 other sweaty people in a club and go for a little dance or something.
Okay, I'll remember to wear my armor when we meet. Fritz.
I'm sure Fritz is missing touching people. So just for the audience, he was my manager. No.
Oh God! I thought.
Vladi, do you ever feel molested by my touching?
No. So, Zach, that was really nice to talk to you today, to have this discussion with Fritz. I really enjoyed everything, and looking forward to having a whiskey with you guys in person.
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah. I'll try not to edit too much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zach, for making this happen, and I still feel honored that you invited us.
Oh man, it's a pleasure for me that you guys came. So yes, definitely numbers 2, 3, and 4 are already in the pipeline. So yeah, guys, it was great having you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take good care. Okay.